Welcome back and welcome to a quick little DIY video on my new daily driver. For anyone who's watched the channel before, I did have an Audi SQ5 that I ended up getting rid of in favor of this Golf Sportwagen. Short story is basically that I have a long commute and the SQ5 was not very good on gas, so I ended up opting to get rid of that for something better on gas, but still big enough to haul parts. Anyone who follows the channel may be a little disappointed that I got rid of the SQ5. I only put out one video, and I think it was my most popular video, but we have changed to this. So, still in the Volkswagen Audi family, but much more of a dad car than the SQ5. Today, we're gonna be going through a quick DIY on the rear brakes. So I bought this thing a couple weeks ago and the rear brakes are very cooked. This is mainly just going to be a DIY video on how to do rear brakes for a Mark 7 Volkswagen Golf or Golf Sportwagen Alltrack. Should pretty much apply to all of them, except for this has a manual parking brake, whereas the Golf R and maybe the GTI, those have electronic parking brakes, so honestly makes it a little more difficult. Anyway, let's jump into it. I'll show the parts and then I'll go through the process of how to get the rear brakes done for the Golf. Alright, so wheels off, car is jacked up. Just showing the old rotor real quick to try and give people an idea of why I'd be replacing these. A, they're really rusty and crusty. B, you can see all these grooves. Some of them are pretty deep, like my finger will actually catch in those grooves. And there's a little bit of a lip, and then the pads, they maybe have like a third of their life left, but in general, rear brakes are pretty cheap. I'll cover the parts that I got in a second. I would bet this is all OEM. This car's got like a little over 75,000 miles, so very much time for a replacement. First step here is going to be to remove the caliper carrier bolts back here. So there's two of them. I think they're 13 millimeters. We'll remove those, and then I don't know if we'll remove the whole caliper yet. We'll see if we can slide the disc out without removing this piece. Then we'll do that. If not, then we'll remove it all. We'll pull the disc off, and then start with the new stuff. There's a bolt kind of in the middle here that you have to hold in order to get the 13 millimeter carrier bolt off. So just a note, you want like a thin adjustable wrench, which fits in there pretty well. Alright, so those two are out. You can see I wiggled the caliper off. It's kind of just resting here. I think that'll be fine. I set something here to put it on, but I think it'll just kind of stay put right there. So now we're going to take the set screw out of the rotor. Alright, pads are out, set screws out. Now the fun part's going to be trying to get the disc off of the hub, because it's been on there for 6 years. I think we can leave this and kind of slide the disc out, so that's going to be the play, but if that doesn't work, we'll end up taking this off. The only reason I haven't removed this yet is because there are torque to yield bolts on the back, and I didn't get new ones from Volkswagen, so technically you're not supposed to reuse them. Let's be real, almost everyone does, so worst case, I'll take this off and we'll reuse them, but trying to just avoid that altogether. Alright, so we got the carrier off. These are the bolts, super long. They are 14 millimeter triple square, so make sure you have a 14 millimeter triple square before you get started. Again, these are torque to yield. We're going to reuse ours. Again, a lot of people do that, so I'll reuse them, I'll torque them, they should be fine. But yeah, I mean, if you're building a race car or something, don't do that. Now the next step is really just to pull the rotor off here. So rotor is off. At this point, check your wheel bearings, basically clean off the hub, and then you'll be ready to start putting stuff back together. A few more steps that I need to cover, but I think I'm going to paint, just give my calipers and the carriers a really quick coat of flat black. Probably going to go ahead and disassemble the other side so I can get all the parts ready for paint. I'm going to paint them, and then we'll come back and finish up the install of the new hardware. Alright, for anyone curious about my paint setup, I basically covered, I don't know, the sides of the truck that's in the garage. This is an LS swap. Anyone wants to see that series, it's all on my channel. This side I kind of used like old sheets and blankets, whatever, and then covered the whole side of the car, and actually came down and covered like inside the wheel well, used a bag on the hub, and then just kind of painted the caliper. Yeah, there's a good angle. Just painted the caliper kind of outside of that with some cardboard on the floor, and then the carriers just painted outside. Those were easy. So this was probably the most time-consuming step because I had to wait for the paint to dry on the calipers, but figured I'd just show this if anyone wants to do something similar. So we're ready to put the new parts back on. These are the parts that I chose. So I chose both power stop rotors as well as power stop pads. These are the Evolution ceramic. Don't know much about them, but very reasonably priced. Got them off Rock Auto, got a good deal. Kit comes with new bolts for your caliper and some grease, and then the rotors. So these are Geomet coated, which is good. I always try to buy some type of coated rotors. They obviously look a lot better than the ones that came off. First step is going to be to probably clean up the hub a little bit, get the rotor on, then we'll do the carrier and caliper and pads and all that. So let's get started. Alright, so carrier bolts are in. Those are torqued to 66 foot-pounds. I think it's 90 newton meters, 66 foot-pounds. So just remember to torque those up. The next step here is going to be putting the pads in. Alright, so we're going to put a little bit of grease here on these pins. It should help them just slide in a little bit easier. You don't need a ton, don't go too crazy. Alright, that should be good. Just a light coat. Sorry, that was the front pad. Yeah, I had those mixed up. That was the front pad. Alright, so the second pad slips in just like the first. Grease it up the same way. A little bit tougher because you can't see back there, but it slides in the same way. Next step is to compress the cylinder on the caliper itself. Just a note, I tried to do this first with this very simple brake caliper tool and I got nowhere. That was my own dumb fault. Turns out you actually need the special tool because these pistons rotate when they press in, so if you don't rotate it, it just won't move, and that's what was happening for me. Did a little bit of research, figured out I needed the tool, so fortunately I had to wait for Amazon to deliver the tool. So, note to self, buy this $20 tool if you're going to do brakes on your Mark 7, or else you are in for a world of headaches. We got the tool set up. This is pretty straightforward. There's a bunch of different adapters. You find the one that works for that fits in there. So in this case, it works like this. Put this in. This gets sandwiched on the other side of the caliper, and then you basically just twist, and it should work. Whenever you're doing this, make sure to take the cap off your brake master cylinder in case any fluid comes out. I don't think too much will come out, but always kind of good practice. So we're going to compress this thing quick, and then we'll keep moving forward. So finish that up off camera. You can see how easily the caliper slides on here now, which is exactly the way you want it. We're going to put a little bit more grease just kind of on the back of these 2 points of the caliper, as well as just a little bit on the piston, and then we'll tighten this down and torque it up. One thing I forgot to mention quick is to torque the caliper guide bolts. They give you new bolts in the kit. Torque those to 25 foot-pounds. The one back here is pretty tough to get to. You can do it with a swivel or just snug it up with a wrench. That's it. We're going to throw the spacers on and get this thing on the ground. Alright, last step of this. Now that the brakes are done, it's looking great. I'm glad that I spent the time to put the black paint on there. Definitely makes it look nice and fresh. We're going to put some 15mm spacers on here to get the back wheels a little bit more flush. Spacers, super easy. I'm just going to put some anti-seize on the back to make sure I have no issues getting them off. And then the only other thing with spacers is just to make sure that when you do this to your car that you get nuts or either bolts, nuts, whatever they are, long enough to make up for the spacers. So you can see there I got some extended bolts from ECS Tuning. These are much needed to ensure that you are making up for that extra width of that spacer. So just kind of a little safety tip. But we're going to put some anti-seize on the back of this and then throw it down on the ground, and we will be done. Alright, this job is officially done. Overall, really not bad doing these brakes. I think the main thing to note, getting the carrier bolts out with that 14mm triple square, they're in there pretty tight, so that's not easy. Be ready to pry on those. So that's number one. And the second one is just make sure you have the right tool to compress that caliper, because like I said, these rotate a little bit different than other cars that I've worked on. Everything's looking much nicer, and the wheels are looking nice and flush now. Yes, much nicer. Hopefully this helps you guys out, anyone that's trying to do brakes on their car. And stay tuned for more. I got a lot of little projects planned for this daily. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.